I still remember the day everything changed, not just for me, but for my daughter too. That morning started like any other, with a soft drizzle tapping against the studio windows and the smell of cinnamon oatmeal lingering in the air. I was balancing sketches on one side of my desk and snack boxes on the other, hunched over a half-finished fabric mood board while trying to get Isla's shoes on. She giggled as I tucked her hair behind her ear and kissed her forehead, promising she could color on the extra fabric scraps when she got home from school. Running my tiny design studio in Portland while raising Isla alone had always been hard, exhausting even. There were nights when I passed out on the couch still holding a pencil, and mornings when coffee couldn't quite erase the shadows under my eyes. But we managed. We had our routines, our little victories. Her sleepy, "I love you, Mama," every morning was the thing that made everything worth it. Isla was my heartbeat, my anchor in every storm. Every sleepless night and missed opportunity had been worth it, as long as she was okay. But that morning shattered whatever peace I thought we had finally built. It started with a call from her school just after 10. At first, I thought it was a mix-up. Maybe she'd forgotten her lunch or had a minor fall. But the tone in the secretary's voice cut through me. "Marjorie, it's the school nurse." Isla collapsed on the playground. She was unconscious when the teachers found her. "Paramedics are taking her to Mercy General." Collapsed. Unconscious. Those words didn't belong to my daughter. Not my bright, curious little girl who danced in grocery store aisles and sang to squirrels in the park. I drove like I had no brakes. Traffic lights blurred, horns blared behind me, and every second on the road felt like it was peeling skin from bone. When I reached the hospital, I didn't even park properly. I just left the car in a loading zone and ran. Inside, the nurses were already prepping Isla for tests. Tubes in her arms. Oxygen mask over her tiny face. Machines beeped in an irregular rhythm that made my pulse spike every time it changed. She looked so small in that giant hospital bed. So fragile. My baby, fighting to breathe. Her eyes were barely open, her lips pale. My hands shook as I brushed her hair back, whispering over and over, "Mama's here. Mama's here." The doctors pulled me aside. Their words came in pieces, like puzzle fragments, too heavy to carry. "It's a congenital lung defect. Rare. Very rare. We need to operate immediately. There's fluid buildup. Risk of respiratory failure." Then the part that knocked the wind from my lungs. "The surgery will cost about $120,000. I blinked. "I don't have insurance," I admitted, as if saying it would magically make it less true. "And savings," I trailed off. After years of scraping by, every cent had gone to rent, groceries, and secondhand art supplies for Isla's school projects. They gave me that look. The one that meant they'd try their best, but couldn't promise much. I sat down in the hallway, my hands trembling as I reached for my phone. There was only one person I could think to call, though every part of me knew how this would go. My mother. She answered on the third ring. Her voice was light, casual, with the clinking of glass and background music echoing behind her. "Hello." "Mom." I choked, trying to stay calm. "It's Isla." She collapsed. "We're at Mercy General. They say she needs emergency surgery and I don't." She cut me off with a laugh. "Marjorie, I can't talk right now. We're right in the middle of Camille's birthday toast." Camille. Of course. My younger sister's birthday extravaganza. I'd seen hints of it on social media, yacht rentals, drone light shows, and some celebrity chef flown in from LA. "Please," I whispered. "She's in the hospital." "The surgery." Her tone shifted, annoyed. "We've already spent nearly $400,000 on this party. You know how important this is for Camille's image. We can't just throw money around." I felt like I was falling through the floor. "You spent that on a party," I said, voice rising, "and you can't spare $1 for your granddaughter's life?" "Don't make this dramatic," she snapped. "You chose this life, Marjorie. You left the family. Maybe if you hadn't pushed everyone away, you wouldn't be in this mess." And then she hung up. The silence in that hallway was louder than anything I'd ever heard. It wasn't just the rejection. It was how easily she'd done it, How casually she erased me and Isla, like we were a failed investment she'd long written off. That night, sitting in the dim hospital room, I couldn't stop thinking about the trust fund Camille got at 18 while I was told to figure things out. About every family event I wasn't invited to. Every birthday I spent alone. Every door shut the moment I needed help. Still, some foolish part of me hoped. I called my father. Leonard answered after a few rings. His voice was measured, almost businesslike. I heard about Isla. That's unfortunate. I swallowed. She needs surgery. I don't have the money. Please, Dad. Help me. There was a pause then. I'll help, Marjorie, but only if you agree to sign away any future claim to the family estate. Permanently. It felt like ice wrapped around my throat. You'll only help your granddaughter if I cut ties with the family? You want me to sign away her future for her to have a future? It's not personal, he said calmly. It's about protecting the trust. You've always been separate. We just need things clear on paper. I nearly laughed. Not personal? He was attaching a legal condition to my daughter's lungs. I'll figure it out myself, I said coldly, and ended the call. I sat with Isla all night, watching her sleep with tubes in her arms and machines tracking every breath. I didn't sleep. I couldn't. By sunrise, I knew what I had to do. If they wanted me out, fine. I'd burn every bridge myself before letting them decide my worth again. The next day, I sold my car. It wasn't much, an old hatchback with a broken heater, but it gave me a few thousand. Then I opened the wooden box I hadn't touched in years. Inside were pieces of a past I never thought I'd part with. My grandmother's sapphire earrings, a silver bracelet Isla had once held as a teething ring, and my engagement ring from a marriage that lasted barely 3 years. Every piece was a goodbye to a version of myself I no longer had time for. Next came the studio. My tiny design haven with color swatches and custom lighting. I sold the lamps, the adjustable tables, the textured fabrics, and even the high-end scissors I'd once saved months to buy. I stood in the middle of the now-empty room, holding a tiny wooden swatch board, the last thing left. It had once been my compass. Now it felt like a relic. But none of it mattered. Isla mattered. And I wasn't going to let her down. Not like they did. One night, while searching for paperwork to cancel the lease on my now-empty design studio, I came across something I hadn't seen in years. At the bottom of a dusty file drawer, wedged between old tax returns and an expired health card, was a thick envelope. Yellowed at the edges, it was addressed to my mother in neat, printed type. Curiosity got the better of me. I slid it open and unfolded the contents. What I held in my hands nearly stopped my breath. Legal documents, dozens of them. My eyes scanned the first few pages. They detailed a trust fund. Camille's trust fund. The one she bragged about on her social media. I always assumed it existed, but my parents never confirmed it. My stomach turned as I continued reading. There it was, line after line about disbursements, clauses, financial protections, and then a section labeled amendments. And then I saw it. Removed. Marjorie Elaine Daniels. Just like that. No reason. No warning. No justification. My name wasn't missed, it was crossed out. Deliberately. Legally. I froze, the document trembling in my hands. I slid to the floor, curling the papers to my chest as if they could somehow soften the blow. My vision blurred with tears as I rocked back and forth, breathing through the ache that had taken root in my bones. I wasn't excluded by accident. I had been erased, cast out like a stain on their perfect picture. That night, something inside me broke. Not just from exhaustion or fear. I had been living on the edge of both for years. What shattered was the illusion that any part of me still belonged to them. But even in the darkness, something sparked. A fire. Maybe rage. Maybe love. Probably both. Because Isla still needed me. I couldn't afford to fall apart, no matter how deep the betrayal ran. A few days later, everything began to shift. I had made a short, vulnerable post online. A photo of Isla's tiny hand gripping mine in the hospital, with a simple caption, "Please pray for my girl. Anything helps." I hadn't expected much. Just needed to feel like someone out there was listening. The next morning, my inbox pinged with a message from Jonah Feldman. We hadn't spoken in years. He'd been a project manager at the high-end design firm I worked for before I opened my studio. He was one of the only people back then who treated me like a human being, not just a junior designer.
Hey, Marjorie.
Just saw your post. I sent you something, it's not much. But you're not alone. Attached was a $3,000 donation. I stared at the screen, then burst into tears. Not because of the money, though God knows we needed it, but because someone had reached for me without asking for anything in return. That kind of kindness had become rare in my world. And Jonah didn't stop there. He asked for permission to share our story. I hesitated, but then I said yes. Within hours, he had launched a public fundraiser. He included photos of Isla, a summary of what happened, and a detailed timeline of our situation. I thought maybe a few $100s would come in, enough to pay for medicine or cover a hospital night. But within 24 hours, the post had gone viral. Within 72 hours, donations poured in from strangers across the country. $20 here, $50 there. Some were anonymous. Others came with notes that made me cry all over again. One mother of two sent $500 with a message that read, "For Isla." From one mom to another. "Stay strong." A retired veteran from Ohio sent $1,000, saying he'd lost his daughter to a lung condition years ago and wished he could have done more. Each message carried hope. Each dollar brought us closer to saving Isla. For the first time in weeks, I let myself breathe. But peace never lasts long when your past wants you to suffer. At first, it was subtle. A few comments popped up under the fundraiser. Things like, "Why doesn't she get a loan?" And "Is this even real?" Sounds dramatic. Then, the whispers turned into shouts. Camille couldn't stand the attention, not being on her. Always obsessed with her image, she posted an Instagram story the day after a local blog ran an article about the fundraiser. It was just a short clip, a close-up of a champagne flute and her polished nails. Then her voice, smooth and smug. Funny how some people pretend to struggle for attention when they just want what they were never promised. No names. No tags. But the message was clear. The gossip blogs pounced. One headline read, "Designer cries broke, gets thousands while sister hosts gala." Within hours, I was trending, but not in a good way. Hashtag sick for sympathy spread like wildfire. People dissected every image I had ever posted. My old studio setup was called "Too Fancy" for someone broke. One account accused me of lying about Isla's condition because the hospital bed looked too clean. It didn't matter that I had receipts, test results, and discharge summaries. It didn't matter that Isla was still fighting for her life. People who had cheered for us just days ago now accused me of manipulation. Then came the worst blow. A corporate client, one I had been working with for months on a full office redesign, emailed to say they were reevaluating vendor relationships due to recent public backlash. That one project would have paid 3 months' rent.
Gone.
I sat in my living room that night, lights off, holding Isla as she slept. Her breath wheezed softly in my arms, a reminder of how fragile everything still was. I wanted to scream. I threw my phone across the room. Delete the fundraiser. Shut the world out. But I didn't. Instead, I whispered to Isla. I made promises I didn't know how I'd keep. I told her that no matter what happened, I would protect her. That we were not done yet. Just when I thought it couldn't get worse, it did. At 7 a.m. sharp, there was a knock on the door. I opened it to find 2 police officers and a social worker standing outside. "We received a call about a possible case of child endangerment," one officer said gently. I blinked. What? They explained there had been an anonymous report. Claims that Isla was living in unsafe conditions. That I was emotionally unstable. That she wasn't receiving proper care. I let them in. I had nothing to hide. They walked through my apartment. Asked questions. Took notes. Looked into the fridge, opened drawers, checked Isla's medication chart. They left with polite apologies. Said everything looked fine. But the damage had been done. I sat on the floor after they left, knees tucked to my chest, shaking in silence. I didn't need proof to know who made the call. It was them. It had to be. That night, my phone rang again. It was Theo. He had been like a big brother to me ever since we met at a community design workshop years ago. We had drifted after I became a mom and life got messy, but he always showed up when it mattered. He didn't ask if I was okay. He just said, "We saw what happened. Come over." We made dinner. I didn't argue. I packed a small overnight bag, wrapped Isla in her favorite blanket, and left. Because sometimes the family you need isn't the one you're born into. It's the one that opens the door when the world tries to shut you down. When I arrived at Theo's home that night, I found them all waiting for me, Theo, Avis, and Dorian, standing under the soft glow of porch lights with open arms and warm eyes.
My real family.
Not tied to me by blood, but by loyalty, love, and every moment they showed up when no one else did. Theo pulled Isla gently into his arms, whispering, "Hey, little bug," like he always had since she was a toddler. She clung to him, resting her head on his shoulder, and for the first time in weeks, I saw her body relax. Avis, calm and commanding as ever, walked over with a folded blanket and thermos in hand. Her energy was always grounded, like she could carry the weight of everyone else without breaking a sweat. Tea's hot. Chamomile and ginger. For your nerves and your soul. And Dorian, sweet, scatterbrained, brilliant Dorian, emerged from the kitchen wearing an apron that said, "Hug Dealer," and holding a plate of chocolate chip cookies. They're still warm. I used extra butter. That fixes most problems, right? Despite the mess of my life, I smiled. Just for a second. Because here, in this little found family haven, I wasn't just a case or a scandal. I was Marjorie. Just Marjorie. And Isla was loved simply for being Isla. Theo placed a hand on my shoulder and looked me square in the eye. "There's something I've been meaning to tell you," he said softly. "Avis and I co-signed your studio lease months ago. Quietly. Just in case. We didn't want to take anything away from you. But we also didn't want you to lose something that mattered." I stared at him, stunned. "You what?" "We wanted to give you a fighting chance, even if it got hard," Avis added. "Not charity. Just love." Tears spilled down my cheeks before I could stop them. I didn't even try to wipe them away. "And you're not staying in that apartment anymore," Avis continued. "You and Isla are moving in with us. No argument. End of story." I nodded, unable to speak. The lump in my throat was too big. For the first time in what felt like forever, I felt safe. Not because someone had given me money. Not because of a trending fundraiser or media attention. But because someone chose me. Not out of obligation, but because they wanted to. The next few days passed in a blur of boxes, healing, and long nights of tea and whispered talks. I helped Isla set up a small bed near Avis's meditation space, complete with twinkle lights and her stuffed fox. She smiled again, a real one. It was small, but it was enough to keep me going. But the fire inside me hadn't gone out. It had simply been waiting. Later that week, I returned to my emptied-out studio. It felt like walking into a memory. The scent of fabric, faint paint on the walls, and the quiet hum of possibility that still clung to the air. This space had once been my dream, my escape, my sanctuary. And now I knew what I had to do. Not for revenge. Not even for closure.
For truth.
I opened my laptop and hit go live. The screen flickered, and I saw myself reflected, pale, exhausted, vulnerable. I took a deep breath. I wasn't going to say anything publicly again. I began, my voice shaking. But they keep coming. And now they're targeting my daughter.
So here it is.
No edits. No filters. No makeup. Just me. Just the truth. I spoke for nearly 20 minutes. About the rejection, the party, the phone calls. About the surgery, the online trolls, the fake reports to CPS. I didn't sugarcoat a thing. Then I looked directly into the camera. And I've invited them, my biological family, here for a conversation. Let's see if they show. To my surprise, they did. Darla walked in first, dressed to impress in an elegant navy pantsuit, clutching a leather handbag like a stage prop. Her face wore the expression she always used for photo ops. Concerned, polished, insincere. Camille entered next, teetering in designer heels, lips pursed, eyes scanning the space like she was arriving at a red carpet. Leonard followed, stoic as always, hands behind his back like a corporate general assessing damage control. They had no idea that hidden around the studio were multiple phones and webcams, still recording, still live. At first, they acted sweet, almost believable. Darla leaned forward with a soft smile.
We're so sorry, darling.
We didn't know things had gotten this bad. We're here now. We want to help. Before I could respond, my phone buzzed. An anonymous message. A file. A video. I opened it without thinking. The screen filled with a high-quality recording. Darla standing in a tastefully decorated room, talking to someone just off camera. Should I say something like, I was lost in my grief and failed my daughter? She asked, rehearsing her words. A woman's voice responded. Yes, that line works. Make it sound sincere. Tilt your head a bit when you say it. It was a media coaching session. A rehearsed apology. The room around us went silent. Camille's mouth fell open. Leonard's face turned gray. And the live chat on my laptop exploded. Are you serious? She rehearsed an apology? Cut them OFF. We believe you. I looked up, locking eyes with Darla. You didn't come here for me, I said. You came to clean up a mess. A mess you made. Then I reached out and ended the stream. In the hours that followed, it went viral. But this time, everything was different. No trolls. No pity. Just support. Just fire. Just people rallying behind the truth. I woke up to thousands of new messages. Stories from others who had survived toxic families, fake apologies, and lifelong gaslighting. People from all over the world began to tag their posts with hashtag WeBelieveMarjorie and hashtag TellYourStory. It didn't fix everything. Isla still needed treatment. I still had bills. My reputation still teetered on the edge. But it changed everything. And then came the fallout. Camille's brand deals dropped like dominoes. One luxury skincare company made a public announcement about severing ties due to values misalignment. Influencers unfollowed her en masse. Leonard was removed from 2 nonprofit boards without explanation. His name quietly disappeared from the Portland philanthropy circuit. And Darla's beloved spa? Yelp was flooded with reviews about her character. Appointments vanished. Her image, so carefully polished for decades, cracked under the weight of her cruelty. They tried to fix it. Apologies. PR statements. Carefully crafted letters addressed to me. Let's talk, Marjorie. This has gone too far. We're still your family.
I didn't reply.
Not a word. But silence, I learned, didn't calm them. It made them desperate. That's when the calls to CPS started again. New names, new lies. The same vile attempt to paint me as unfit. The social workers returned, this time with apologies in their eyes.
We have to check.
It's procedure. Then came professional sabotage. 2 trusted vendors pulled out of a project without warning. One confided they'd been told I was unstable and unreliable. Someone was spreading lies behind closed doors. I told Theo everything. He didn't flinch, just listened. Then he made a single phone call. And that's how Katrina entered my life.
Tall.
Confident. Dressed like she'd just stepped out of a courtroom. Because she had. A child welfare attorney and advocate with a reputation for cutting through corruption with a scalpel. Theo only said, "You're not alone anymore." And for the first time in a long time, I believed him. They've picked the wrong person to harass, Katrina said, setting her laptop aside and folding her arms. Her voice was cool, her posture razor straight. They thought you'd stay quiet. That you'd crumble. They don't know what we're made of. So now we return the favor. But we do it right. Legally. No emotion. Just facts and fire. She meant it. In the days that followed, she and her team of investigators and digital forensics experts worked around the clock. They pulled phone records, scoured IP logs, retrieved metadata from emails, and quietly contacted vendors and social workers who had received suspicious calls. Piece by piece, the puzzle came together. 2 weeks later, Katrina sat me down with a stack of files in hand. "It's Camille," she said without hesitation. "Her PR firm has been orchestrating a quiet smear campaign against you. Anonymous calls to CPS, slander to vendors, curated leaks to gossip sites. All of it traces back to them." She showed me the proof. Emails between Camille's publicist and a blog editor suggesting my fundraiser was a crafted sob story, screenshots of burner accounts tied to Camille's social team, and time-stamped call logs sent to child services with matching coordinates. My stomach turned. It wasn't just petty jealousy or family drama anymore. This was targeted, malicious. Katrina wasted no time. She filed a formal defamation and harassment suit, complete with claims of intentional emotional distress, endangerment, and obstruction of medical support. Backed by social worker testimonies, video evidence, and digital trails, the case was airtight. Camille was served in public, at a wine-tasting event in Napa Valley, no less. A photographer snapped the moment as she stood frozen in disbelief, a glass of rose still in her hand, the legal envelope pressed to her chest. The photo exploded online. And suddenly, the narrative changed. It wasn't single mom begs internet for money anymore. It was erased daughter fights back and wins. Within a week, everything shifted. Clients who had ghosted me months earlier suddenly reappeared in my inbox with sincere apologies. One sent a handwritten letter and a bouquet of sunflowers. Another offered to double my previous fee. My calendar, once empty and demoralizing, was filling again. But it wasn't just about the work. People saw me differently now. Not as someone who broke down, but someone who stood up. I wasn't a pity project. I was a survivor, strong, honest, and unafraid to speak. My studio, which had once echoed with the emptiness of packed boxes and broken dreams, began to breathe again. Slowly, it hummed with life. A fabric delivery. An order for custom upholstery. A local boutique wants a new window display. One job at a time, the space that had nearly vanished began to rebuild itself, and me along with it. I remember the morning I stood in the center of the studio, the scent of fresh-cut fabric filling the air, sunlight dancing across the sketch wall, and I let out a deep, steady breath. Not because everything was perfect, but because I finally had something better than peace. I had power. Then came the message. This time, through a polished, overly polite lawyer, someone who had likely never tasted discomfort in his life. "Your family would like to resolve things privately," he said, his voice coated in corporate calm. "They believe a final meeting might restore a sense of dignity and clarify a few financial misunderstandings." Translation? They wanted money, not healing, not reconciliation, just control, dressed up in civility. I said yes. But only on my terms. We set the meeting in my studio. My space. My energy. My rules. And I prepared something in advance, a small gray suitcase, lined with simple leather. Inside, I placed $25,000, the remaining balance from the fundraiser, after Isla's surgery, the legal battles, and donations to the hospital that saved her life. The suitcase wasn't charity. It was closure. On top of the cash, I placed a handwritten note on thick cardstock. All it said was, "Final payment. This ends here." They arrived looking different. Not older. Not exactly. But smaller. Less impressive than the gods they had pretended to be all my life. Darla's eyes flitted across the room, searching for something to judge. Leonard looked drawn, more tired than I'd ever seen him. And Camille? She wore oversized sunglasses indoors, her lips twitching like she was rehearsing how to smile if someone pointed a camera at her. I didn't let them sit. "I want to be clear," I began, standing tall. "This," I tapped the suitcase, "is all you're getting. This is the final exchange. You take this, you walk away, and we never speak again." Camille's brows furrowed. "That's it? After everything we've been through?" I didn't blink. "Because of everything." Darla looked at the suitcase like it was beneath her. "If this gives you closure," she muttered, voice thin and sharp. I didn't bother explaining that I'd already found it. What they didn't know, or maybe didn't notice, was the camera in the corner. Not hidden. Just a standard live stream camera I often used for tutorials and Q&As. It was rolling. The moment they picked up the suitcase and left, no hug, no apology, no emotion. The internet got its final chapter. The video leaked 2 days later. No yelling, no tears. Just 3 people reaching for money with cold hands and walking away from a daughter, a sister, a granddaughter, without a second glance. The world saw it for what it was. And then silence. No more calls. No more threats. No more anything. Just quiet. But this time, it was a peace I had chosen, not one forced on me. The studio bloomed. Not just with orders and contracts, but with purpose. We converted one side into a shared workspace for young women in crisis, free workshops, mentorships, and a safe space to create. And behind it, with the help of volunteers and donors who found us through the live stream saga, we opened a shelter for single mothers. A place for women like me. Women who had been told they were too loud, too broken, too much. Isla, fully recovered and buzzing with boundless energy, became the unofficial mayor of the place. She raced down the halls in light-up sneakers, her laughter filling every corner, reminding us that healing could sound like joy. And Theo? He never left. He brought coffee every morning, built bookshelves without being asked, read to Isla during quiet evenings. We never declared anything. No labels. No grand gestures. Just a rhythm. Steady, warm, real. One evening, I stood in the shelter doorway, watching Isla chase Theo in the courtyard. She wore a construction paper crown, yelling, "King Theo can't catch me," as he pretended to trip and fall into the grass, laughing. I leaned against the doorframe, arms crossed, heart full. This was family. Not bloodlines or last names, but the truth. Loyalty.
Love.
Chosen and earned. Healing, I realized, was never about revenge, or even about justice in its purest form.
It was about choice.
About building something new on the ashes of what tried to break you. As Isla ran toward me, cheeks pink and smile wide, she threw her arms around my waist. "Mama," she giggled, "we're happy now." I kissed her forehead and whispered back, "Yes, baby, we are." Finally free.